yours truly, Brevin Thompson, is back, this time to talk about Spectre, which was again directed by Sam Mendes and is Daniel Craig's fourth film as James Bond. Now, I remember seeing this back in 2015 after seeing Skyfall and hearing that Sam Mendes was back to direct this. I was really, really excited. I don't think this is as good as Skyfall and certainly not as great as Casino Royale. I mean, I did think it was better than Quantum of Solace, and I do think it gets a lot of unnecessary bashing, both by critics and by fans. But I think it's one of the more underrated Bond films, in my opinion. And the thing is, I mean, Daniel Craig is still great, as always, as James Bond. And Christoph Waltz, even though he's not really in much of the film, is a pretty good villain as Oberhauser, who later eventually is revealed to have changed his name to Ernst Starville Blofeld. And of course he's the leader of Spectre. Now, when it comes to Blofeld, he's always been one of my personal favorite Bond villains, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people will say the same thing. And because he's always been like a real classic Bond villain. I mean, from the Sean Connery Bond films, and now, I mean, and of course with George Lazenby with On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and that brief little cameo in Roger Moore's For Your Eyes Only, and now, like, many years later, we got Blofeld again in Spectre. Now, when it comes to Spectre, I mean, I do think that it's a pretty entertaining Bond film. I mean, it's beautifully shot, has pretty good action sequences, and it has a really good Bond girl with Léa Seydoux as Madeleine Swann, who will also be back again for No Time to Die. I think she's pretty good in this film, and her and Daniel Craig have pretty good chemistry, I believe, and she's definitely one of the better Bond girls, in my personal opinion. So I like how this film opens a little bit after the events of Skyfall, with Bond, after receiving a message from the former M, who was played by Judi Dench, to go after a certain target in Mexico City. And after assassinating this target, this later leads to his investigation into the terrorist organization known as Spectre. Meanwhile, M is dealing with a new national security chief, C, who wants to replace the 00 program with the Nine Eyes program with drones, so they can do all their dirty work for them. And M is not really happy about this. Every time it cuts back to M dealing with C and this drone thing, it always kind of like halted the movie, and it doesn't really feel like there's like stakes until like the third act, in my opinion. It's just like, I mean, it kind of felt a little bit forced. Now, when it comes to certain action sequences, there's like a few that I really love. I did like the helicopter moment in Mexico City. I did think that was pretty well done. The airplane chase with Bond chasing Bautista and trying to save Madeleine Swann, I did think was pretty good. And Léa Seydoux, I do think, like I said, I do think she's a pretty good actress and makes for a pretty good Bond girl. And there's the train fight with Bond against Dave Bautista, of all people. I did think that one was pretty well done and very well shot. Now, when it comes to Christoph Waltz as Ernst Starville Blofeld, the leader of Spectre, I do think that he's a damn good actor, and I loved him in Inglourious Basterds. I loved him in Django Unchained. But the problem is, I mean, even though I did think that he gave a good performance in this film as well, he's not really in much of the film, and he has like a limited amount of screen time, which I do think was a little bit disappointing. The decision to have like to have Blofeld have ties to Bond's origins, I've always been a bit mixed on, but I can understand them trying to make this, the Daniel Craig Bond movies all connect into like one timeline of sorts, but which I do understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to make a story arc which is eventually going to end with No Time to Die. And even though I do like Christoph Waltz as Blofeld, I wish that he had like a little bit amount of screen time to have his character be more fleshed out. And mostly with how some of the villains are written is also a bit of an issue. I mean, they're acted well, but when it comes to the storyline with C, I did not really care for it all that much. And I did think he was the weakest of the villains in this film. And when it comes to fan service moments, of course, when you have Blofeld, you have the Persian cat. I mean, though he's not like the typical, like, cat-stroking cliche villain who wants to take over the world. Well, of course, I mean, he wants to, like, take control of, like, government agencies by using the new surveillance program. I mean, that part, I mean, that's kind of like, but it's not like so over the top where it can get a little bit silly. And of course, he has the scar, which kind of like resembles Donald Pleasance's Blofeld and You Only Live Twice, which kind of like was like, yeah, it kind of looked like he looked like he was the Blofeld from You Only Live Twice. And when it comes to the gadgets, Bond doesn't really use much gadgets except for like an exploding watch and a beautiful looking Aston Martin DB10, which doesn't like do much. I mean, it was a prototype. I mean, it's bulletproof, has a flamethrower, and of course an injector seat, which I did think was pretty good. Although he does eventually, at the end of the film, get a classic Aston Martin DB5, which of course has been around since Goldfinger, which I do think was pretty good. And when it comes to the fight scene on the train, definitely homages the train fight and From Russia with Love, which I did think was a pretty nice touch. So despite some issues with some of its scripts and how like the villains are handled, I do think this is not a really bad James Bond film. I do think it's good, but not as great as Casino Royale or Skyfall, but definitely better than Quantum of Solace. So it's definitely the number 3 Daniel Craig Bond film for me, at least until I see No Time to Die, so I can have an official ranking for the Daniel Craig Bond films. Daniel Craig is still a good Bond. I mean, I wish that Christoph Waltz's version of Blofeld was a little bit more fleshed out. Ray Fiennes, Naomie Harris, and Ben Whishaw, I do think they were pretty good. And Léa Seydoux, I do think is a pretty good Bond girl. And there are moments where where the runtime can make the story drag a little bit. That's also another issue that I have with the film. But overall, I do think it's a pretty good Bond film. So I'm going to give Spectre a B+. So guys, what did you think of Spectre? Let me know in the comments below. And next up will be No Time to Die, which I am really excited for. And after so many delays because of the pandemic, I'm just like, God, I finally have an opportunity to see this film and I do not want to miss it. So yeah, I'm really pumped for this film. So guys, thank you so much as always for watching. I'm looking forward to doing more videos really soon. And if you want my thoughts on old or new films, of course, you know where to find me.